We are lucky to be joined by a native of Fort Kent, Maine. He made his racing debut at the age of 13 in 2007 at Spud Speedway in Caribou, Maine, driving in the local racing divisions before moving up part-time to the touring late models division in 2009, where he qualified for his first ACT tour at Oxford Plains Speedway. Had a cup of coffee in the Cup Series, the Truck Series, and Xfinity Series, and found his best success in the ARCA Menards Series, winning the 2017 ARCA Menards Championship. He's changed hats nowadays, and he's now an elected state representative in Maine. We are lucky to be joined by Austin Theriault. Austin, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We appreciate having you. We've had a slew of the Team Hornaday development drivers over the last couple of months here, and of course that's something you've also got your hands in. Excited to have you here. Let's jump right into things, and the first question I like to ask is, how'd you get the racing bug?
Well, I'll tell you, my grandfather was a huge part of getting me into racing, and it was as simple as taking me to my first NASCAR race, probably back in 2000 and, I don't know, 98 or 99. I probably was just a little kid, 5, 6 years old, and we used to go to Loudon, New Hampshire to watch the 2 Cup races every single year, and camping out the week during the summer. I know there was 2 races back then. I think the first one was in the spring and then the summer. But actually, no, it was in the summer, and then the second one was in the fall. But anyway, a lot of good memories there. And you know, as I developed as a race fan, followed Mark Martin very closely. He was my favorite driver growing up. The local track that you mentioned, Spud Speedway, opened up, and when they opened up, a lot of my friends and the local people that I knew were getting into this racing. You know, they were getting into this short track racing, and I didn't know much about it. I was, so used to watching the NASCAR stuff, and Martinsville was the smallest track, and 2.6 miles was the biggest track, and I didn't know the whole culture of short track racing until I went to my first race, and we ended up buying a kind of a bomber car, 4-cylinder Pontiac, and certainly wasn't a racing machine, but it was still my entry into the sport, and from there, that's how I continued to move up, and my grandfather, was there every step along the way, including, buying that car for, I think, $500, the first car ever. So, it was kind of a chance thing, because the track in Caribou had been closed for many years, and in 2007 it opened back up, and so I guess you could say it was good timing.
So you cut your teeth, obviously, at the short tracks to begin, but in 2012, you mentioned New Hampshire Motor Speedway. You made your debut for Go Green Racing in the K&N Pro East Series at New Hampshire. Talk to us a little bit about that debut and what it meant to run in the Pro East Series there early on.
Well, I was fortunate to meet a lot of good people along the way, and they say you can't get anywhere unless you have a lot of good people behind you, and that's totally 100% true. Through the whole process early on, I remember meeting Archie St. Hilaire, and that was his K&N car at the time. It was K&N Series, but I had won some sort of challenge that he had put out. I think it was like Young Guns Challenge, and a bunch of people had applied, submitted resumes and whatnot. And I ended up winning that challenge, competing against a bunch of other young drivers in New England. And the funny thing was Archie ended up moving up himself in racing and ended up owning a Cup team, multiple years down the road. So he was a big fan of racing, and I'd say played a big part in getting me further up and getting noticed and whatnot. And you got to be thankful for every opportunity you have along the way. And I don't think we finished really good that day, but certainly good to get on the track with the likes of I think maybe Brett Moffitt or those guys were racing that day, and Eddie McDonald and stuff, and we probably finished multiple laps down, but still a great experience.
Well, that's awesome, Rep. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between driving in a NASCAR race and politics. Sometimes you feel like you're going in circles in a very hot and heated environment. But talk to us about your Xfinity Series debut for Junior Motorsports in 2014, and especially what was it like learning from Dale Jr.? That must have been quite the experience.
It was amazing. That was just 2 years after the 2012 debut at Loudon and in the K&N car. So things were just accelerating really quickly between those years, and just some of the doors that were opening and some of the people I was meeting. I was very fortunate to meet Kelly and her husband, who basically run Junior Motorsports now. Even now, they're still basically running it, and sitting down and talking about the different opportunities, and we ended up signing I think a 3-race deal, and it was great to be at Loudon, and I think we went to Iowa and Kentucky that year. So
awesome.
Being able to spend some time, like you said, with Dale, and listen to what he had to say with all of his years of experience was a great opportunity, and I certainly learned a lot that year. That was probably one of the most challenging years that I went through, just because it's like jumping off the deep end after an ARCA start and a bunch of late model starts and some K&N start and all that. Jumping into the Xfinity Series in a top 10 car, talk about pressure. So, fortunate, learned a lot coming through that, and I think it made me a better driver on and off the track.
So Dale Jr. was obviously one guy that you cut your teeth with, but in 2015 you began racing part-time for Brad Keselowski Racing in the trucks, what is now the Craftsman Truck Series. At the time it was the Gander Outdoors Truck Series. Talk to us a little bit about working with Brad, and obviously Brad's somebody right now who's well respected in the garage, and he's certainly run his course too, now being a Cup Series team owner, and certainly I would have to believe some inspiration there for what you've been doing.
Brad was one of the first guys that I met when I first came to Charlotte. This was before the Junior Motorsports 2014 races. I had run a bunch of late model races for the Keselowski development program, which was run out of Gary Crook's shop right next door to the truck shop. And between Gary Crook's and Brad Keselowski and Wayne, there's a guy who was GM at the time, Wayne Setterington. Learned a lot from those guys. We went to some of the bigger late model races in the country, thinking like Snowball Derby, Winchester 400, All-American. Gresham. I think we went to Milwaukee, and just all over the country to some of the bigger races, and talk about just a great situation to be in with an affiliation with Brad, and being able to go across and spend time with when he had his truck team that was there, spend time with those guys, go to the racetrack. And then be able to just work in the shop during the week, work on the cars, mop the floors, clean the cars, change the oil, just almost like you work there, but you also were able to work on the cars or drive the cars on the weekends. So I did that. And that was definitely my main reason, I guess, that I ended up back at Brad's in 2015, because we had already had the relationship. And when Ryan Blaney moved up to the Xfinity Series, it opened up the 29 truck. So that was a special year, and certainly ups and downs. I think anybody can look at just overall results that year, and we progressively got better up until that crash I had at Vegas in October of that year. We were progressively getting better, week in and week out.
So yeah, you mentioned the Vegas wreck. That one was a scary one. Tyler Reddick, who was your teammate at the time, got loose in turn 4 and clipped you. But talk to us about the safety. I guess that's a good little segue of the safety that has come about in the NASCAR sanctioned series right now. Anything stand out to you safety-wise?
The safer barriers basically being installed at all parts of all points of the racetrack. I think what made the biggest difference, the wall I hit in Vegas did not have the safer barrier. So I believe that was the same year that Kyle Busch ended up crashing and breaking a bone. Maybe it was his leg or something. Same thing. He hit an unprotected wall, and so there was a big push to just basically put these foam barriers in all parts of the track, because you can never know exactly where anybody's going to hit. A computer model can tell you that there's a 5% chance of somebody hitting here, but those are the places that drivers end up hitting. So, the Hans and all that had already been implemented. That probably saved my life, even though, even that cracked. It saved my life from being much worse. And the truck stayed together. It's just when you're going 160 and hit the wall, I mean, there's really not much other than that foam in between the wall that was going to make things a little bit better, but just didn't have it. And I'm certain NASCAR learned a lot from both those crashes that year, and there's continued to be safety improvements in NASCAR, and I just foresee it continuing to get safer. I know that the next generation car had some challenges because it was stiffer, and they had to build a stiffer car because they wanted that next gen chassis to last longer than the previous chassis before. They'd run them a couple races and then they'd junk them, or they'd change the clip, or it just was very inefficient. It wasn't an economical way to race. But the next generation car went almost too far, I think, and they made them stiff. And when you make a car too stiff, the driver ends up taking more of the brunt of the force. So that's what they're going to work on, from what I'm hearing, and I think they still have a ways to go.
So you mentioned at the get-go a favorite driver of yours, Mark Martin. You also ran for Kenny Schrader in the ARCA series, and both of those gentlemen have been on the show here before. Talk to us quickly a little bit about your championship year in the ARCA series running for Kenny Schrader.
I remember watching Kenny Schrader, back in the day. He wasn't somebody that I watched, all the time and every week, because, like you said, Martin was the guy that I was rooting for. But it was really amazing to end up coming back and racing for somebody like Schrader because of everything that he's done. Schrader's the type of person that'll jump in any car any day and race. And I put him up against a lot of the drivers that are racing nowadays, just in terms of all the different cars that he can get in and adapt to. And I think that's what makes a good driver. So in 2017, when I first met Schrader at the PRI show, which is in Indianapolis every year, it's like a motorsports industry racing show. A bunch of people from across the country go there and meet with vendors and meet with companies and all of that stuff. But it came out of the blue that I just met him in one of the side hallways at the show, and we started talking about what 2017 was going to look like, and he invited me over to the shop to have lunch and talk to them about what we might be able to do, and we put together an awesome program in 2017, and there was a bunch of really awesome team members that were really committed to being successful and really sacrificed a lot of time away from their families. And we were dedicated, we were committed, and we didn't always have the fastest car. Certainly did at some races that we won, but I think we were I would say smarter, more mature, and just had a plan for what we were going to do at every race, and that's why we walked away with the championship at the end of the day.
Awesome. So talk to us quick, Representative. Certainly pretty neat that you're balancing both being a driver and being an elected state representative in the great state of Maine. Talk to us a little bit. What made you, first of all, decide to run for state representative? And congratulations on that. I saw you were sworn in back in December. And what has it been like balancing both careers? Two very different and distinct careers for sure. So what has it been like first to be a state rep in Maine, and what has it been like balancing both being a rep and a driver?
So the interesting thing is I would say that I always was interested in politics from a young age, even as a middle school, high school kid.
You and me both.
I was following what was going on, but the racing really changed my course, and I kind of completely stopped following and just totally committed to doing whatever I had to do to move up in the racing ranks. By the time 2020 came around and COVID was at full swing, I had just been coming off. I just come off a race where I was injured at Talladega, in running a Cup car, and that was that Cup opportunity, even though it wasn't necessarily with the in a car with the most speed, was an awesome opportunity with some of the different partners we had working with us to make that happen, and I felt like the future was really bright. But between COVID and that injury, I started to kind of be called to take a look at getting back involved in public service, and lo and behold, the seat opened up for the state legislature up in Maine, and I jumped in, and here we are now. Basically 6 months into my first legislative session. We're out of session for the year. We go back in January for the second session of the year. But talk about a whole different world to get used to, and you had mentioned something about running around in circles and people fighting. I mean, it can be like that. Unfortunately,
right.
It's not always what people think. It's sometimes I think it's worse than what people realize. Just how mismanaged the government can be, and it's surprising sometimes how how the services are able to get delivered to the people, as how dysfunctional that the government can be at times. So I feel honored and I guess pretty grateful that I have the chance to represent my home district and my hometown, and including other towns nearby to where I grew up. And let's see where this goes. I've already met a lot of great people, and what I will say is I do have faith that we can make it better, and we can find a way to work together. And that's one of the things you don't see much of anymore. It's all partisan, and a lot of games that are played, and the only people that hurts is actually the people back home. And
sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say I agree with you, and I think it's great that you call it public service, because I call a lot of what I do public service, because I think that's really what it is. Being you being a state rep, or myself a county commissioner, so I give you a lot of credit for your approach there. I think that's important, and you're right. A lot of times in some of the political games, it does get lost that we're serving the public, and I have no doubt you do so exemplary, as I at least try to do. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, it's in racing. One of the things I always realized is if you're going to win, you've got to find a way to work together, and you have to. You're not always going to agree with the people that are on your team, even, and a lot of times your personalities won't even match up. But if you try to sabotage each other, then everybody's going to fail. So there are some things that one could take away from racing or competition or any sport and business, is trying to succeed at the cost of somebody else may benefit you in the short run, but I promise you it's not going to pay off in the long run, and it's going to make everybody else suffer. So that's kind of my general view. Besides going into issue by issue, it's just we can do much better. And I think both sides are equally guilty.
Absolutely.
You're here.
So got a couple more questions for you before we let you loose. The first one, obviously, can't let you run out of here without talking about your Cup Series debut, which happened in 2019 up at Loudon as well, New Hampshire Motor Speedway, running for Rick Ware. Talk to us a little bit about some of the memories you have. You ran back-to-back weeks up here in the Northeast, obviously making your debut at Loudon and then running in Pocono the following week. Talk to us about your Cup Series debut.
Well, when the Cup Series was running back in 2019, I remember they had the high downforce package, like with the big spoilers, and that was a huge change for me. Believe it or not, I remember going to Loudon and then especially at Pocono, and I couldn't get over how much drag the cars had with that big spoiler. And even with my truck experience, with those trucks being very draggy, meaning like you got to stay in the throttle just to keep the speed up. Well, the Cup cars were even worse, and so it took me a while to adjust to it. But I was still pretty honored to be on the on the Cup the track with those Cup guys, and I thought our finishes were respectable. I know we had a mechanical issue at Loudon, and it's not something you can really avoid. But besides that, I felt like we were clean, we were respectful, and at times felt like we had at least speed comparable to where we should be compared to the guys we were racing against. And so that was really all you can ask for. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Oxford 250, which is coming up.
Absolutely. You stole my thunder, because that was going to be my next question as to, I hear you're getting back into a race car. Talk to us a little bit about your plans coming up.
So the Oxford 250 is coming up on the 27th of August, and I've raced that race probably 4 or 5 times, and other than a crash, I believe our finishes have been fairly consistently in the top 5. I think I had a second place, a third place, a fourth place, and so we just haven't been able to come out with the trophy yet. And I was fortunate that Bar Harbor Bank and Trust came on board to partner with us for just this one race. But after some really cool conversations with them, we decided to bring on Travis Mills and showcase the Travis Mills Foundation, and that's a retreat up in Maine who serves the disabled folks who served in the post 9/11 wars. So anybody that was in Iraq and Afghanistan. Travis Mills himself actually is a quadruple amputee, so he lost all 4 limbs. He's got a artificial arm and 2 artificial legs, and he's got that foundation up and going to try to help these service members and their families. So really excited that Bar Harbor Bank and myself are partnered together to raise some awareness and hopefully raise some money for Travis and the foundation. We actually have an anonymous donor who's going to commit $100 a lap. So every lap I compete in the race, they're going to donate $100. So if I complete all the laps, if you do the math, that's $25,000. And if I finish in the top 5, there'll be another $25,000 bonus, and all of that money going to the Travis Mills Foundation. So I feel the pressure, but it's also good to get back behind the wheel. And however it turns out, I'm going to be happy. It's been 3 or 4 years since I've been behind the wheel of not necessarily behind the wheel, but just in an actual long race. So just want to get in the race. There's going to be 60-some cars there. It's always normally pretty hard to qualify in that race, but let's get in the race and raise some money for Travis and his foundation.
That is an excellent story, and obviously going forward next week or so here, I'm going to try to share around as many links to help you around as well. Just for any folks who'd like to learn more either about your political career or your racing career, how can they do so? I'm sure you got a Facebook page or website that you can give us.
Anybody can find me on Facebook. Just search my name. But I'm glad you brought it up. We have a donation page set up. It's austintheriault.com/Oxford250, and that'll direct everybody. It kind of goes through the whole story of the partnership, and there's a donation link there. And whether somebody can give $1 or $100, it doesn't matter. It's all about the cause. And my other website is austintheriault.org, which is my website for all the political and Maine State related work that I'm doing. So feel free to check it all out. But thanks for having me on the show today, and I really appreciate spending a few minutes with you guys.
We appreciate it as well. Austin Theriault joining us, who currently is a state rep up in Maine, but also a driver development leader as well now. Quite a story. Thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you here.